it's really a pleasure here, and what I would like to do here is really to present a little bit where we are going with our tool, especially with regard to the new edition of PMBOK 7, which has come out a couple of weeks ago. Good. Now, let me, share a little bit my experiences, my views about the new project management. So I think PMBOK guide is really focusing now on the new level. It's really the value delivery, which comes really also from the agile project management. And it has really taken a systematic view, so what they say as well. So the new PMBOK guide, is still a separation between the standard of project management and the guide of project management body of knowledge. This has been the case already before, but I think now it's better differentiated. They're looking from different angles, while the standard for project management is more looking at the value delivery and the principle of project management. The guide to the project management body of knowledge is more like defining different project performance domains. It looks also at tailoring these domains, and it's not about tools and techniques anymore, but more like models, methods, and artifacts. Again, here, in my view, it takes up different approaches, which is, for me, an enrichment. Then it is also to be said that it, as I said before, also it integrates different approaches from agile, predictive, iterative as well. So, and it was more targeted towards how the project management can contribute to value delivery. And this is really a new approach in my view, which is good. It's really relevant for project management at large, gives some guidance. But on the other hand, that's my personal opinion, it's not a book to learn with. It's not like the old PMBOKs, which really describe different knowledge areas and project domains, but it's more like to get an overview of project management as such, different approaches and how this can be applied. So that's my first feeling about the new PMBOK. I think it's interesting. It's also very light. It's half of the pages than the last one, or even less. And it really gives a good overview of project management as such. Now, if you look specifically into the PMBOK guide, well, the book is always taking together the two parties, the standards and the guide. But however, I think what it changed here is really two things. Well, what I said is already taking into account predictive, adaptive, and also iterative project management methods. But it really shifts away from, let's say, a project-driven approach to project management domains, which is larger, which is also a good approach to cover the different parts of project, or the different approaches of project management. So the project performance domains, which are outlined here right at the bottom, they really define how all these kind of different projects should take into account different aspects of project management, like stakeholders, like the team, like the development, the approach, the life cycle of the project, planning, may it be iterative, may it be predictive, all the project work that has to be done to come to the deliverables, the delivery as such, and how to measure deliverables in the different approaches of project management. And finally, it's also about uncertainty, which certainly gives more approaches to see what kind of approach is needed in what kind of environment. This is the first part. Afterwards, it really looks at this again from a tailoring perspective. So it gives a hint about how to tailor it, and all, let's say, the tools and the documents that you create during the project management processes, they are taken together as models, methods, and artifacts. Again, here it allows also to cover different aspects of project management and to make sure that iterative, adaptive, and predictive are involved as well. Just a moment. Okay, so for me, looking at that, what I said as well, it's more like a framework. It's not a textbook with which you can learn project management. It also said that it's not a standalone book, so it's still the process groups and the knowledge areas that are elaborated in PMBOK 6 is also always valid. There are guiding principles that project managers should know as well. You should probably also know, as a good project manager, different models of approaches of agile project management. So whenever you provide training, I think other training material is needed in the PMBOK, and that's probably also what PMI says right now. The PMBOK is the guide, but to learn project management, additional material should be added, should be taken into account. In the PMBOK, as I have read it, a lot of these methods, topics that are relevant for project management, they are mentioned, but not necessarily explained in detail, which has been the case before. So it really, in my perspective, stays on a high level, gives good guidance, it covers the different approaches, but that's it, and it doesn't go really into details. I hope that this covers my view, but I don't know if you do have already some questions, if you have some remarks as well in terms of the new PMBOK. If not, we can take it up again. You have always the chat as well as a possibility to ask some questions that we can take up afterwards as well. Okay, good. Then, well, now the question is about the new PMBOK, if it has an influence on the PMP exam. And I'm also going to touch on the CAPM exam. Well, my answer is no, and that's also what PMI says. It's the basis of the certification exam is the exam content outline, and the exam content outline for PMP has been changed beginning this year, in January this year. Now there has been a major change from the process groups. They changed to 3 exam domains. I call them here exam domains, which cover people, about 42% of the questions, processes, half of the questions, and about 8% of the questions that are related to the business environment. So the major change about the exam has already been done. And with these changes, PMI also introduced the ATP status, authorized training partners, and those who are authorized training partners, they do have access to the new training material. The new training material is already aligned to this exam outline, covers some parts of the new PMBOK as well, but this is the major, let's say, learning material for candidates that would like to take the exam. So in a short notice, no, PMBOK 7 does not have an influence on the exam. It might have on the long term. I haven't seen anything for the time being yet, but for now, the exam can be taken again as before. It has to be probably also assured that if you take only the PMBOK and with the new exam outline, you might not cover all the aspects anymore, but that's up to be seen from your side. If we look into the CAPM exam, again here, the basis of the exam is the exam content outline, and this has not been updated, I think, in May or March 2018, so this is still relevant. For this exam outline, the knowledge groups are still relevant. They actually build the basis of the exam, and well, the knowledge groups, areas, not groups, the knowledge areas, in addition to introduction to project management, but also project environment and the role of the project manager who are there. I looked up also on the website, and it says clearly here that despite the new edition of PMBOK, the 6th edition is still relevant to learn for the CAPM exam. So these are actually the basis for the 2 exams. Always go back to the PMI website and search for the content outlines, exam content outlines, to be sure about the content that is covered in the 2 exams. Okay, any question with regard to, say, the new edition and the exam outline?
Yeah, I have one question. Is sorry, this is Manuel from Greenlight Project Management.
Yeah.
The material that PMI provides to the candidates when joining a course, is that change now, or will it, do you know if that will change after, or I mean, regarding if it is to be done within the PMBOK 6 or 7?
Mm-hmm. Well, if you talk about the training material that you get as an ATP, I think there have been, well, I haven't been looking into it, but there have been some changes. They have adapted it slightly, but they said as well before that these materials that you get as an ATP for your participants, this is already aligned to the new view of PMI with regard to the PMP exam, the outline. So that has changed. I don't think it has been adapted because of PMBOK 7. It has been changed before, more aligned to the exam outline. I hope I could answer your questions. Probably if someone else as a trainer has experience with the material, please feel free also to intervene and to share your comments, your views on that as well.
I have a question, Patrick.
Mm-hmm.
So which is the STS product that we can sell to help people to prepare to the PMP exam?
That's what we're going to talk about right now. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Arnold. Does someone ask some questions with regard to PMI, the changes, PMBOK? And I hope that I could answer the previous question. If not, then yeah, that's the next question. Actually, what I wrote it down. How does the new PMBOK influence? First of all, we have the exam simulators, exam PMP and exam CAPM. We're going to look first at this, and second also about the e-learning course. So in terms of exam PMP and exam CAPM, we have always aligned it to the exam content outlines. They call PMP and they call CAPM, and which we have done this well for CAPM some years ago. So with the new PMBOK, there were no changes. And for PMP, the exam PMP, we have done it at the beginning of the year. So we have created the domains. We have attributed all the questions to one of this domain. And also, if you do take an exam or if you work with the domains, then you have also the split according to the exam outline. So this has been done already beginning of the year. And it's an ongoing process. We still are about to review the questions, make sure that they are still relevant. They are also covering topics with regard to new PMBOK 7. So this is certainly something we're going to do, but all what you have right now is relevant for the exam. So exam PMP has really been updated beginning of the year, and it's relevant. What we're going to do is also going to add the references to the PMBOK 7 right now, more for learning purposes. This is not about the exam so that you can check if you're ready to take the exam or not, because this is really based on the domains. But what we're going to add also that the learners can reference to different books. We're going to add the domains, the project performance domains of PMBOK 7. So this is just an additional help for learners to orient themselves in the learning process. With the exam CAPM, for the time being, we are not going to change anything. As we said, it's still relevant based on PMBOK 6. So the knowledge areas are covered. You can look at all the questions from the perspective of the knowledge areas, but you can also look at them from the process groups. Just to this is just a help in the learning process and so forth. With regard to the exam simulator PMP, we're certainly going to constantly now revise the question, and also with the feedback that we have from participants, with the feedback that we have from trainers as well, we're going to focus on more situational questions. We're going to revise the ITTO's question, those who talk about the input, tools and techniques and outputs, since this is going to be artifacts now or models, methods. So those who are not relevant, we take out. If there is a need, we're going to rephrase them. This is going to be certainly some work to do, and that's what we envisage in the next couple of months. But this will be a constant work on the current exam, so there will be no new additions. We have now the tools that we change questions that people see it instantly, and so always the access that you get is the access to the latest version. What we also say that we keep in all the questions that are referencing to the knowledge areas or process group, even though it's not relevant in the new PMBOK anymore. But I think this is really for the learning purposes. Again, also because the PMBOK 6 edition is still valid, and knowing process groups and domains might sometimes be relevant for the exam as well. I think there are less and less questions about that, but to understand the logic of PMBOK, we keep it in there as well. Probably reduce the number of questions and focus more on situational questions. So this is about the exam, how we're going to deal in the future also with the exam. But for the time being, well, it is up to date. It is adapted to the new content outline, and you can use it. Now, probably the second question is more about the e-learning course, the PMBOK that we have also. Is this still valid? Well, it is, as it PMBOK 7 makes references to previous versions, so there is still a relevance in using PMBOK e-learning course as well. As I said before, also the PMBOK 7 does not explain all the concept in detail, so sometimes it might be good to have additional learning material, and our e-learning may help to understand the planning processes, the risk management processes in more details, because this is not covered. This is also is referred to previous versions within the new PMBOK. So in our review, the content which we do have in the e-learning PMBOK is still relevant. You can use it as a support of the preparation, but you have to be also aware that it does not cover all what you need for the exam anymore. So there is more because of the content outline that needs to be taught, but PMBOK e-learning is still a relevant source of information, source of training for candidates. Also, as an ATP, you are actually encouraged, I would say this like this, you're encouraged to do instructor-led trainings, and kind of individual trainings you're not allowed to do anymore. As we are an ATP, you're not going to maintain this product as an individual learner. But it might be that for one or other reasons you would like to give with the instructor-led training the e-learning PMBOK, so that you can focus more on the new topics, which is more like the agile topics, which is more like guiding people or managing people through project. This kind of topics which has not been covered before. So you have probably more time in the classroom to deal with those topics and can refer to these procedural topics in the e-learning. For the CAPM, on the other hand, PMBOK 7 still remains relevant. That's something that you have heard at the beginning. So you can still use the prep pack. That means the e-learning together with the exam CAPM to prepare individuals for certification. These are the major actually statements about our product. But I would also like to give you an overview how we're going to develop that in future. We're going to invest as well in the digital learning content related to PMI as well in the future, and probably also changing that as well. So what we think right now, it's less dedicated to really a procedural approaches anymore. I think PMBOK is designed in a new way that it's, let's say, kind of not free, but it's open. It looks at project management from different perspectives, and this might be also important for us in dealing with the contents, the learning contents in the future. So we're certainly going to integrate also iterative, adaptive approaches, methods in the e-learning. I think that's relevant. We are on the way to do that. We also including more like topics like leadership, high-performing teams, managing teams, solving conflicts, and so on, to really try to cover all the project performance domains which are outlined in the new PMBOK. For us, again, the PMBOK, as it stays right now in the 7th edition, will be the guidance to further develop contents. And probably we're also going to not have specific content anymore for PMI or the IPMA, but I think the two standards are merging together. The topics that they're covering more or less the same topics from this different perspectives. But what a project manager needs to know today is far beyond processes. It is really about people, processes, and business environment. And if you look at the IPMA individual competence guideline as well, they call it perspective, people, and practices. So our approach will be in the future to really merge all the different topics and to provide, let's say, a good library of project management related topics in a digital way that might support the learning process, either for certification or for project management as a day-to-day project manager. So this is why we see it in the future to cover that, also with the possibility to afterwards to tailor-made contents for your purposes. We need still some time to do that. It's a major endeavor, but I think the new PMBOK guide as it's structured right now, as well as other frameworks, they go into this direction and help us to do so. So this is basically an outlook where we are going in the future, and yeah, to cover all the domains, but then afterwards to really serve actually the project management community with the learning material that really helps in their daily life. I hope, Orlando, I could also answer already your questions. With this, actually, I'm already more or less at the end with the explanations. That means, well, I'm here open for discussion, for also questions from your side. I hope that I could have given you some good insights. And please let me know what you think about the new PMBOK, what you think about our approach, and also a little bit what your requirements would be in the future, if I may ask you. Mm-hmm. You have to unmute yourself. I can try to unmute all, but I think you still have to click yourself to unmute because I cannot do it for you. Please, who would like to ask a question?
Maybe, sorry, Rickard Romander from Greenlight also.
Yeah.
I have a question. On the previous, I think it was 2 slides back, you mentioned that the PMBOK 7 makes references to PMBOK 6, I think it says. Or previous versions. I have not read the 7 yet, even though I just got it.
Okay.
I'm going to prepare. But isn't this very strange? Really? What's the idea then? So someone that buys PMBOK 7 has to buy PMBOK 6, 5, and 4, and 3 also to get the full view? Or what's the idea really? Or where should they really find that information?
Well, you are a valid point. I'm not going to defend PMI here. And I think what PMI wanted to do with the 7th edition is really to have an overall guide which actually takes into account different approaches. And with the PMBOK 6, I think let's say the predictive approach of project management with the processes and the knowledge areas has well been developed. And well, as they still use it for CAPM, they cannot really give it up completely. So I think it's in between. You're right, it's sometimes a little bit strange for participants, but I think PMBOK 7 doesn't go in all the details of the processes anymore. So you need to know about risk management as such, but if you know if first of all, plan risk and identify risk and so on, I think it's less and less relevant, and I think it will become less and less relevant in the future still. So they're gonna have the topics they have to find with the performance domains, and within that you need to find your way to master these topics the best. And some might still go back to PMBOK 7 with these processes which are still relevant. Some others might use other approaches. I think this is the logic behind the kind of 2 approaches to the PMBOK. I hope I could give you some insights. As I said, I'm not defending PMI, or I have no more insights of what the reflection there were. It's just about the reading that I have done, which makes me to conclude this way.
Okay. Thank you. I'll read it and get my own view, but it makes sense, and maybe it requires more training than or other material next to it. So I mean, the book itself will not be enough for someone that wants to learn about project management. I mean, more in detail.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think this was probably also the reason to introduce ATPs, because there they have developed their own training material, the handbook for PMP. And this covers much more topics indeed, also about high-performing teams, about business environment, which probably is not covered that well in the PMBOK 6 edition.
I have a question.
Yeah, Orlando. Mm-hmm.
So if I understand correctly, we cannot sell an STS package that runs on e-learning. On e-learning, that's a full package based on e-learning, but a part. So because the PMBOK 6 or the product by STS PMBOK guide is still valid, is still usable and partly needed to be prepared for the exam, then exam PMP is partly adapted to the new exam, if I understand correctly.
It's fully it's adapted. Yeah.
Yes. Well, there I have a specific question, because then we know 45% of the questions are people questions, and my question is, do we have 45% people questions in exam PMP? But that's a side question. Okay, so this is why I say, so exam PMP is partly adapted, or is almost adapted, or is fully adapted, so whatever. So exam PMP is a part of the product we can sell, plus PMBOK 7. But the third component is needed. So that is the performance domains, and then what is now the performance domains, or which is given to ATPs as material to be used in presence trainings. And today, STS does not have a product, but has a product in the pipeline. Is this correct, this understanding?
This is correct. Let me put that way. If you, well, you can still sell, if I put it bluntly, you can still say sell our products, but I really, and that's my wish, that you know, if you sell it, then with the PMBOK e-learning, you're going too short, because there are new domains of knowledge that are added which you don't cover yet. So especially you do have still the techniques in the PMBOK which are relevant, which you can use for learning purposes, but I really recommend, if you sell a training and if you're not ATP, then add the question add contents which are covered in the content outline but which are not covered in the e-learning. So then you certainly have a good product. That's my advice. With regard to the exam, we've added questions, we still add it. It's right, if you take the overall question set, then probably there are not 42%, but the 42% come into, they're relevant if you do an entire exam. So once you do an entire exam, or an exam that is split up, if you only want to do 100 questions in 2 hours, then the how to say, the ponderation of the questions is there, but not in the entire database. And that's certainly something which we on the long run going to change. But you have to do an exam simulation to be sure that this ponderation is considered. And with the last point, indeed, what we're going to focus in the future is really to have a big library on digital content that cover all the topics. We are not going to cover the ATP material as it is. We're going to cover from the exam content outline and from the PMBOK those areas which are relevant for the project manager. So, but that's going to be in the future. Yeah.
Yes, the point from a reseller point of view, yeah, an STS reseller point of view. So what I would like to have is to a PMP prep pack, as we used to have, so that people who address you and tell you, so I am one person, so I am not part of a company, I am not part of a big group, I am one person, and I do not want to, or I cannot pay, or whatever. I do not want to go to a public class. And this is an important customer base that we say, well, no problem. So we have one license for one person, and that is the PMP prep pack. So it costs whatever. Okay. So we don't have that anymore, right?
Well,
we have a part of it. So
well, PMI with the new ATP status, they don't want people to do self-learning anymore, or if they do self-learning, they have to do it with their own content, which is debatable, which I'm not going to comment here, but which puts us into a little bit different situation, I would say that. But we are working on finding solution, and we certainly come back to you in this regard as well. Okay.
Any time frame for this?
Well,
so at the level of
not yet, and simply because the reason we're going to hire someone new is going to be responsible for the content and revising the content. And with this new person, which actually starts next week, we're going to do a roadmap after once she has seen the contents, and then with regard to our priorities, we're going to fix the priorities going to go. But we're certainly going to change also the system in a way that whenever we add new contents, even though you have access, you will see that. We're certainly then going to inform you, but it's not always a new course that we have to use enough to also to create. So it's going to be more like a a rolling process as well.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome, Orlando. Any other question? From your side, any thoughts from your side as well? Insights, also some experiences that you have gained so far? Feel free also to use the chat if there, so far I haven't seen anything as a question.
Okay, I have a, well, maybe it's a matter I have some lack of knowledge on the ATP's role, but I understood you, or would like if you could clarify what is supposed to do or not the ATPs now from the PMI perspective. I understood like you are not to use your own materials when preparing people for the certification. Did I understand right? Or
well, yes, ATP has replaced the RAPs, so the Registered Education Providers. So now they have abandoned this concept and they have introduced the new concept, ATP, Authorized Training Partners. These are basically training institutes with whom PMI would like to work together, and to whom actually they give access, preferred access to training material. First of all, you have the training material that you should certainly distribute to the participants. You can use your own material as well, or you can complement that, and that sometimes I think it makes sense as well to explain some more. This is the first point. After the second point is that the trainers need to do training with PMI to understand the training material and to get used to the approach that PMI wants. So that's the second one. And with that, actually, then you have access to the material, to the insights, actually, that help people to prepare for the exam. So that's what has changed. So now I think they cannot restrict the other training institutions to still do the training, but it might be that we don't have all the information that an ITB has. And with that, yeah, it's how they work right now, so in this regard. I think there was a second point of your questions, which I forgot, if I'm mistaken, or did I cover all the aspects that you wanted to know about ATP?
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay. Any other questions with regard to our tools, PMI? Well, PMI probably not able to answer all the questions either, but more or less about the PMBOK right now as it stands and the recent changes. Okay. Good. So I really hope that I could have given you an oversight of the new PMBOK, what it means, what it might mean to the training institution in the future. Basically also what we like to do in the future, or to assure you about our tools, that we are going to be on this, and that we're certainly going to invest in the tools in the future as well, because I think it's important, and also digital learning content after the last year might be still relevant. We are within some boundaries, especially for PMI, but I think we can really provide a new approach to all different topics that are covered with regard to project management. And whenever you do have ideas, whenever you do have feedbacks, please do not hesitate to write that to us, either to office or to myself as well. We're always happy to take them up and to integrate it also in our tools. Okay, If there are no questions from your side, thank you for your attention. I'm gonna stay on for those who would like to have still a chat, a couple of minutes. And I certainly wish you a nice afternoon and then a good weekend, which is not too long away still from today. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Patrick.